that drink on you.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. This is going to be a special conversation, and once again I have the pleasure of having my good friend DeRay from Rainbow Fright hanging out with me. Thank you so much for coming here. Let me just say that right off the bat. You're absolutely awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And today we are going to get deep in the mud because we are going to be talking about The Exorcist Believer. And what I wanted to do is just get a little bit of a sense of your thoughts on it, because I haven't heard specifically what you thought, and then just kind of talking about what's been out there in the community and what fans have been saying about it. So I'll just start off with you and just give me a sense of just overall what you thought of it, and we can obviously get into specifics as well.
Sure. Well, coming out of the theater, I wasn't personally disappointed by it. I had a decent time as far as 2020 movies go. We have David Gordon Green bringing back movies from the 70s and putting his own twist on them, along with Danny McBride at his side. So going into it, I had that expectation of it not being like the movie from the 70s, and it kind of being a little bit more similar to the Halloween trilogy that they just did. So with that expectation, I think my needs, I guess, were met with that. It wasn't the best horror film. It's not going to be on any top lists of mine, but for not being a super fan of the 73 film, I like it. It's a respectable film, and I give it all of its props and everything. But because I'm not a big super fan, I think I was able to give this new movie a little bit more leniency. Because if you went into this one expecting it to be anything like the one from the 70s, that's kind of not the way to go about it, because nothing is going to live up to that. They didn't set out to do that. They just set out to make a little bit more money in the movie game. And knowing that The Exorcist is a big name in the movie game and in the horror game, they said, all right, let's just do this. Let's do this next after Halloween, after our success with Halloween. So for me, it was, a good storytelling experience. It wasn't necessarily a scary movie, but it was atmospheric, and it did pull on your heartstrings. You felt the connections between people. The cast was just amazing. And the end exorcism scene, while it maybe could have been more, it was still exciting enough. And I just liked this idea of multiple religions kind of having to come together to fight this evil thing, instead of it just only centering around Catholicism. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Okay, now that's really interesting, because again, and just to let folks watching know, I did not know which way DeRay was gonna go, which is the fun of it as well. But what you said, and you parked on it for a second, and I totally agree. Being that you're not a super fan of The Exorcist, that definitely gives you a different way to perceive this new movie. And I think, in a way, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it frees you up a bit more than a lot of us that were super hardcore fans of the original. I mean, for me, the original was one of those movies I saw when I was young and just getting into my horror movie fandom, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, because anytime we get into something that's religious, and just how gritty William Friedkin crafted that original 73 film, it scared the shit out of me. I was like, whoa, it's time to go to church. We got to get situated and get all of our ducks in line, right?
Yes, amen.
Yes. And, so that's how I felt about the original. And the franchise itself is such a roller coaster. Really, the original stands at the top, and 3 was very good with George C. Scott, which I've been trying to preach that to the masses as much as possible. But for my take on Exorcist Believer, I'm kind of in line with you. I didn't hate it. When we got out of the theater, I was like, All right. That was pretty good. I was actually, and let me know what you think about this. I was actually impressed that David Gordon Green and company really uh held back and were patient and took their time with the story rather than it being a lot of jump scares and a lot of visions of Satan and boop, boop, and all this type of stuff and a lot of
Yeah.
green vomit all over the place. Like, in other words, they didn't they didn't make it seem, or they didn't craft it in a way that a lot of other exorcism or possession films had done. He really spent a lot of time with these characters and what they were going through, which is reminiscent of the original film, which, to be honest, I think modern audiences, they gotta be ready to do some work. When you got a
Yeah.
slow burn movie, you gotta sit back, pay attention. You're not gonna get a jump scare every 9 minutes. It's not gonna be a lot of blood, gore, and guts, and really just follow this story to that finale. So I think what you said, as far as not being a super fan and having those expectations weighted on you, made the experience a lot more enjoyable. Um, and that, kudos, man.
Yeah. I don't think they were appealing to the super fans necessarily. They were hoping that some of them would come in and watch it and give them some of their money and hopefully like it. But it was
Hmm.
definitely made for the newer generation who had never even maybe heard of The Exorcist and never had an interest in watching it had they even heard of it.
Hmm.
And so yeah, with it being 2 hours long, at first you're like, I don't really want to sit through this in the theater. I hate kind of going to movies in the theater that are a little bit longer than an hour and a half because I eventually have to use the bathroom and I hate missing anything in the movie.
Hmm.
Um, but it went by pretty fast after things start to pick up when the girls come back after their 3-day stint in the woods.
Hmm.
Things start to get really interesting and it just kind of goes by quickly for me because I'm interested. We get two girls, and while we do get a little bit more of Angela than Catherine, we still get two different possessions. And I did care more about Angela and Leslie Odom Jr. because the other family were just kind of annoying. You know, I
Uppity.
don't know if I want to. Yeah, uppity, and they were Trump supporters. Like if you
Hmm.
support Trump, fine, but they were just that kind of Trump supporter, if you know what I
Hmm.
mean.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was there were times when it wasn't always harking back to the 73 film. Like there were little things here and there that were homages to it, but it wasn't in your face.
Yeah.
You kind of had to work for it to kind of notice it, and that was nice. I did kind of want to see the crawling down of the stairs, but I think it was fine that they didn't do that because
Yeah.
that's that movie's deal. So that was
Right.
fine, but yeah, I think it still paid respect to the original, but it did want to be its own thing. And I do like that they ended up bringing back our legacy characters, even though, yes, it's at the end. People are so
Hmm.
upset about it being like a throwaway thing, but it's like, hello, this is a trilogy, right? There are two more movies after
Right.
this. So they're obviously coming back and they're just kind of introducing us to the new people real quick.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Agreed, man. And I also think that, and Leslie Odom was great. And I was so happy to be invested in him, in his journey as this father. He was very believable, very charismatic, and I think it was great. The opening was great. We set up the dominoes, so to speak, with what happened with his wife, and I think that it made. I was just happy that they actually went with story over flash. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think, and to be quite honest, and I'm not trying to sound weird about it or anything, but I think, as far as this franchise is concerned, and a lot of possession or exorcism films or whatever, I think that's a win. You got to have a good story. I don't want to just keep seeing little flashes of Satan and
Yeah.
little weird noises and the moon is out and all that type of stuff. Because I think then you really lose the heart of the films. And my favorite films in this subgenre are films where I'm really invested in these characters. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be the one that's being possessed. It could be the people
Right.
outside of the film. Like in this movie, Ann Dowd, I really enjoyed her character because in the beginning, she just seemed like one of those neighbors that you don't want to have.
Yeah.
Is always telling you, "Hey, you didn't do this, you didn't do that," and then come to find out that she was a really, really interesting character, and she's a great actress. Anyways, I loved her in Hereditary, and I know she's done other stuff too. But
Yeah.
it was nice having these characters that you could get invested in, and it made for a better experience. Because, like I said, when we left the theater, I looked at Coriander. I was like, yeah, all right, that was pretty good. I was kind of relieved, but I knew the shitstorm was gonna come, on social media and YouTube, and damn it, it sure did. I mean, even there could be people watching right now, friends of ours, other content creators that we love, who absolutely hated this film. It was almost like they were like, I knew it. This is the worst thing of all time. There will never be a more horrible horror film. What do you think about that? I mean, obviously we all have our different opinions, and that's absolutely fine. But what do you think about the backlash in general, if you could, that this film is getting, even by, folks in the horror community?
Sure. Yeah. People definitely went into this knowing they were going to hate it before watching it. They were going to hate it despite what they saw on the screen. And that's fine, because I get it. It's your baby, this and that and the other, the original movie. But just give things a chance. And if you really have that kind of distaste for it, like, think about it even further and be like, well, what if it wasn't called The Exorcist? Then what would you think about it? But, it is a bit of a soft horror film too at that, because again, it's not really all that scary, because like we said, it really focused on the story. Because for me, I don't necessarily watch a whole lot of exorcism movies, because they don't, I guess, scare me that much, because I not necessarily don't believe in it, but I've not been a witness to it. And when I first watched The Exorcist, I was 14 years old and already had been watching horror films my whole life at that point. And I remember specifically watching it by myself in the living room, and my mom comes into the kitchen to get something to eat. And she's like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "The Exorcist." And she's like, "By yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she just was like, "Oh, okay," and then just walked off. Like, she would never do that at her age. And I'm just like, okay, what's the big deal,
Right.
So I just appreciated the art of the storytelling and the effects and the actors, and this was just another moment like that for me with this one. And so if you're an Exorcist fan and for whatever reason thought they were going to replicate that, you were going to be let down. And if you thought they were going to bring down your experience from the first movie just by existing, then that's the deal too with some people. It's just inevitable, especially with the whole Halloween thing coming out, the whole trilogy and all of that happening. People were just ready to hate on it, or just ready just to give it a chance and love it because they hated or loved that previous trilogy.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because that's what was popping up into my mind, because I know a lot of people, even in comments, not just on my channel, but they were basically like, this is going to be horrible. David Gordon Green is going to ruin another franchise. We saw what he just did with Ends and blah, 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 da, 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 wah, 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 and it's like, and people are talking about, it's a cash grab. Why would they do this? It's like, bro, movies have always been about the cheddar.
You're goddamn right.
Always. Always. It's a business. You can go all the way back, if we're just talking horror, go all the way back, with Dracula and the great Bela Lugosi. They're like, okay, this was good. We got to do another one. Okay, let's get everyone together. Boom, let's do another one. Next thing you know, it's a series. We got Frankenstein. Let's do these Universal monsters. They're going to meet up with each other on the street corner and have lunch and boom, boom. Let's keep doing it, because people are paying money to watch it. And
they're paying money to talk shit too.
yes, exactly. And these characters became larger than life. They became icons. Here we are, almost 100 years later, and we're still talking about those icons, by the way. But movies are still the same. We're going to talk about things that people recognize, that they gravitate towards, that will create a conversation. If it's a franchise, we're going to keep going until there's no money to be made. There's no more business to be made. You know what I mean? So when people say, well, it's a crappy cash grab, or they're just doing it to make money. Well, of course they're doing it to make money. Of course.
You want to watch more movies. They're not going to just stop making movies one day. They're not going to stop making sequels and remakes. So just let them make what they're going to make. Watch it or don't watch it a second time. That's all.
That's right. That's right. And don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's great when we have, newer films. Let's just talk about exorcism films or whatever. Yeah, it's great if we have a newer film in that subgenre that does something different than The Exorcist and kind of takes a different viewpoint or whatever, like maybe The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
And I am Lucifer, the devil in the flesh.
I love that movie, and it was very, very different. But Emily Rose is not a franchise. And if we right now, this video right now, I guarantee you there's going to be more people that'll be watching this video than if we sat down and talked about The Exorcism of Emily Rose. There's no doubt about it, at least initially. Down the road, who knows? The algorithm is weird, but you get what I'm saying. The Exorcist is instantly recognizable by name, and so that's why they paid $400 million to the rights. People were upset about that too. Man, why would they spend that much money? It's like, why the fuck do you care? It's not your $400 million, it's Blumhouse.
You're goddamn right.
Because like they got it. That's why.
Right. And like you said, either watch it or don't. But and I'm probably going to be talking about this too at some point. The movie now is just over $100 million in box office in just 3 weeks. So it wasn't the total crap show business wise that people were predicting. You make over $100 million, with a horror movie, that's not too bad, So it's just funny because so many people say, I'm not gonna watch it, I'm gonna protest, I'm gonna stop eating. It's like, bro, there's a lot of people on this planet. True, it's just a movie, it's not that serious, but there's a lot of people on this planet that went to see that damn movie, to have over $100 million. So anyways, but
they are that serious. They are saying things like, I'm not gonna eat, and I'm over here like, bro, it's not that serious, just chill out. If you don't like it, cool, you don't have to sit here and talk about it for 6 hours and shit on it. Like, good Lord.
and let me also just say this, because I'm thinking right now, because we got some friends that hate this movie. It's all good for you guys if you hate it, and even for content creators, if you want to talk bad about it, whatever, that's perfectly fine. That's not necessarily the way I do it, but we all got our way of doing things, so it's no disrespect to anyone. But I do find it funny because, again, last time we were together, we talked about Candyman, and we talked about our frustration with the new one, which I think at some point we do have to talk about that again. But the frustration we had with the new Candyman, in no way, shape, or form, at least for me, I'm pretty sure same thing for you, did not detract from the original. Like, I'm always going to love that original. It's always going to have a special place in my heart, whether it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, today, tomorrow, right up until I die, I'm going to enjoy that 1992 Candyman, and I think that's, I don't know, I think people, again, it's fun to talk about these things and have discussions and opinions, but I think, like you said, it's not that serious, bro. It's either going to be a good movie or it's not. It's going to reach a new audience or it's not. Like you said, they made this movie not for, an old fart like me. They're making it for that little kid that's just starting on his journey, like I was back in the day, and that's, and I guess this will be the last part I want to get to, is, to me, and give me your opinion as well, but to me, that's a good thing. I want that 7-year-old kid to enjoy The Exorcist Believer, or whatever it's out there right now, and bring him into the fold as a horror fan. Do you look at it that way too, as far as these movies that aren't necessarily made for us or for the older audience?
Yeah, totally. Because, hopefully after watching this movie, they then go back to the beginning and want to rediscover, not rediscover, but discover all these things that they hadn't even heard of before. Um, because film, motion picture is still fairly new. It's only about 100 years old or a little bit more. And even though I went to film school, there are still so many movies that I still have to watch, some old films from the 30s and 40s and 50s. And so these kids who are getting born in 20 something,
Hmm.
get to go back and discover all these films from 100 years ago. And when we're making these newer films paying homage to these movies, they get to kind of just see that reference and have that discovery that we kind of got, at this age. But the older folks definitely didn't, because they grew up with all the original stuff. So they just
Hmm.
have a more fun repertoire to go through, in the next 100 years too to come. So yeah, it's all art, and artists get influenced by other artists. Whether you're a painter or a sculptor, you'll see influences, from different painters from different centuries and things. And with film just being so new, every story has been told.
Mm.
Basically, literally any story that can be told has been told. It's just about
Right.
how you present it. And that's
Hmm.
why a lot of times we are doing these remakes or reboots. And I just say go for it. See what you can do with it. If you think you're gonna be exactly like The Exorcist or like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you're crazy. But if you can make a movie that's entertaining enough with a good story, then that's an accomplishment, and I'm fine with that. So yeah, I think it's
Mm.
cool that these young kids get to have this opportunity to find something new that they probably wouldn't have been able to find, or didn't, have an interest in, maybe in finding, but now they do because they went to the theater with their friend and saw this.
Mm, Absolutely. That was so well said. So well said. And I do agree with you. And it's interesting when you put it like that. 100 years. That's not a long time as far as film. And for these kids that are getting into it now, hopefully they will go back and check out some of these other films and get into the horror fandom, because at the end of the day, and I truly believe this, if a film does well, horror film I'm speaking specifically, but it's any genre, but specifically horror, if a horror film does well, it's good for all horror, because it allows other projects to be made. It allows other projects to be greenlit and thought of in a higher regard, because they say, okay, well, Exorcist Believer, it was a risk, but it's still, it's at $100 million, whatever. Okay, cool. What else can we do? It's a success, and hopefully opens the doors for other things. And obviously, it's good for the other films. Like you look at something like Terrifier. You look at what Damien's done with Terrifier. I'm not saying it's directly related to the bigger IPs, but in a way it is. It all trickles down.
Oh
It
yeah.
all trickles down. So I guess what I'm saying is that if we have films like The Exorcist Believer, and it may not be everyone's cup of tea, especially for the super fans, just remember, it's not meant to be for us necessarily. It's for a
Mhm.
new generation, for the younger kids. And the hope is that you can go into it, like you said right in the beginning of this conversation, with an open mind. See what you think. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, maybe it's middle of the road. But that kid that was in the audience with you, that 10-year-old, that 12-year-old, 15-year-old, or whatever, um, this could be the beginning of their journey, And who knows? They may grow up to be a John Carpenter or a Wes Craven or a Damien
Yeah.
Leone or whatever, and it's like, that's a good thing, because horror itself is still, trying to get that respect, and trying to get that universal praise or whatever, to film enthusiasts. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, look, this was a lot of fun. I knew it would be. I'm glad you enjoyed the film, though. I didn't know, I had a
What was your
feeling.
guess? Did you think I was gonna not like it so much?
Well, I had a feeling that you were going to be, if nothing else, at least middle of the road.
Okay.
Because I think you're a
Yeah.
very open-minded person, and you express yourself as that on your channel, which, by the way, for you guys watching, as always, make sure that you guys subscribe to Rainbow Fright. I have the link in the description. You definitely will not be disappointed. But you're an open-minded person, so I had a feeling that you were going to at least think it was all right. But I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. That's great, because like I said, there are a lot of people that I thought I was crazy, and I know I'm not, but but there were so many people saying it was horrible. It was a horrible story. They were saying it was edited horribly. It
Oh
would
Lord.
this and that. I'm like, what? Like I said, I enjoyed it. It's definitely
What would you
better
give it out of 5?
out of 5. And 5 being the highest, I'd at least give it a 3. I probably,
Mhm.
I probably would say maybe even a 3.5. Maybe in a 3.5, just based upon my experience with it. Like when we got out, like during the watch of it, I'm invested. I'm not bored. There were a couple moments where it's like, oh wow, and blah 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 blah. And then when we left, I was like, yeah, that was pretty good. So I definitely would at least give it a 3, maybe a 3.5.
Nice.
Is it going to be, like you said, on that top 10 or whatever? No, it's not. But it's also because, again, it's a franchise that's well worn for me. As a fan, I've watched these movies since I was a little boy, and so when I'm watching this, and possession films or exorcism films, they have a narrow lane anyways, right?
Yeah.
Someone gets possessed, it affects the family, they get a lot of weird stuff happens, they got to figure out how to save this person. Someone comes in, or people, and let's try to help them out, and it works or it doesn't. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it. You can add your own little flourishes in there, like some movies have, but it's very narrow lane. So when I'm watching it, it wasn't like blowing my mind as far as, wow, this is crazy shit they're doing. But it was enjoyable
Right.
enough. Yeah.
Yes. And I cut you off before. I don't know if you remember what you were saying, but you said it was better than.
Oh,
if you remember.
it was better than the sequels, except for
Okay.
3 was a really good one. I really loved The Exorcist 3, but it's definitely better than 2 and those final 2 movies, which were prequels. Like, to me, it's not even close. I even had a poll, and there were some people saying saying that it wasn't above those, and I'm like, wait a minute, come on, this movie, guys. I get it though. It's conversation. I get it.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
All right. So anyways, for you guys that are watching, definitely let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Let us know what you think of The Exorcist Believer. What do you think of our takes on it, and especially with DeRay? Are you looking at it from the perspective of a super fan, like what she was saying, or are you going into it open-minded? Do you not have strong ties to that original film? Let us know that too. I think that would make for a really interesting conversation. Who knows, we might have to kind of talk a little bit more about that, because I think that applies to all of these franchises and remakes and so forth. So anyways, let us know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit the like button. It helps to support the channel, and I would really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the Nightwatch Zone, please do it. If you're not subscribed to Rainbow Fright, please do it. And we will catch you guys next time. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Nightwatch. Peace.
Peace.